Okay, good morning. I thought I would do this recorded training because I think it's really difficult for all of us to get on the same schedule to do this live training. And since so many of you are dealing with some of these issues, you're really trying to heal from mold illness, or you found out that you're exposed. Maybe you've done an organic acid test and you've seen signs of colonization, that first fungal category on your organic acid test, or maybe you've done a mycotoxin panel, maybe you've done a blood test that confirms mold in your body, or maybe an allergic response to mold in your body, or maybe you've done an ERMI or it hurts me. I think that it's important to first kind of show you guys those test results. I have one here from someone. I'm just making sure we can't see any of their personal identifiers before I show you this. Right, we can't. Okay. So I think it's important to do an ERMI first. And then there are different variations. I always suggest to add on the endotoxin panel if you can. And in my free guide, I give you guys the best case scenario of the testing that you can do within your budget. And this becomes kind of tricky because some of us have larger homes, some of us have split HVAC units. So maybe we have one for the first floor and second floor. Um, Maybe we live in an apartment or a condo, and so there's only so much we can do within our own walls, right? So we are kind of confined to testing what we have access to. And there could be a problem coming from the neighboring wall that's coming through your wall, or coming from the unit upstairs, and coming down into your apartment or unit. So there's not a lot you can do about that. If you do believe that's the case, you see that there's water damage, maybe you have visual confirmation. There are stains, peeling paint, anything that looks abnormal, smells, then you can get your landlord involved, or you can take other steps if you own the building. Maybe you have a relationship with the person in that unit that you can kind of work together with and explain your concerns, because it does affect everyone, right? Even if there's someone within the home that's not experiencing symptoms, maybe they just don't know they're experiencing symptoms because they don't think about mold, they don't think about mycotox illness. And some people experience symptoms way more rapidly, and that's due to a number of factors. So we do have the HLA gene that we have to consider, but not only that, right? You don't have to have one of those HLA gene mutations. You really just have to have a dysregulated microbiome. You have to have a leaky gut, and that will probably put you over the realm of symptom tolerance faster than somebody else who has a very intact microbiome and intact gut membrane. And the same thing for your brain. You have a barrier that protects your brain. And so if we do that, we're not going to experience symptoms as rapidly. It does take time to kind of wear that barrier down. That barrier does typically close in people when they're around 2 years old. But even a simple fall, hitting your head, learning to walk, it doesn't have to be a major trauma to your head, can leave that vulnerable. And so you can end up having that leaky blood-brain barrier. Vaccines are going to contribute to that leaky blood-brain barrier, infection, toxins, metals, like you name it. If it hurts your gut, it hurts the blood-brain barrier as well. So that's going to leave you more vulnerable to these types of things as well. All right, so taking a look, if we do get the ERMI first, which is what I always suggest. I know that there are a lot of Schumacher people, and they only suggest the Hertz me, but the problem is it doesn't have to be one of the most carcinogenic molds to still create a problem in your body. If we take a look at, here's a square, just to make sure. Here's kind of an example. I don't know if you can see with that light. Okay, this is what your test is going to look like. It's a little bit blurred out, and that's fine. But what you're going to do is you're going to receive a score. Okay, right here in the red is a score. Yeah, that light's not going to show it to you. All right, there's a score. When you get your report back, there's a score here. It's going to score all the different molds, how much mold was found, and then the test is going to tell you where you sampled from. There are complete instructions on the website. I use EnviroBiomics. I've used many different companies. I used to use Mycometrics. I just feel like my results are more accurate and consistent with EnviroBiomics, so I trust that. And once I started testing after we cleaned our home with EnviroBiomics, then I wanted to be consistent in the way I was testing so that I knew that that was not another variable in my results. So I've just stuck with them. I trust them. A lot of the mold experts that I've learned from use them. So this is the test that I prefer. I do have a link that you can use as well to order yours. in those instructions, so that you can see exactly what test that you're supposed to use. So the score is going to come back. You're going to get two scores actually. So you're going to get your ERMI results score, right? And that's going to just give you a sum of the different molds that they tested for. So how much mold was on your sample that you sent in? That's why it's very critical that you sample correctly. And then you're going to get a hertz meat score. I'm trying to find one of those sheets so I can show it to you. Okay, doesn't matter. You're going to get these two scores, right? Here we are. Two scores. This is a bad one. This is a bad one. All right. So for someone with CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and if you don't know if you have that, you can Google the symptoms. And there are different clusters of symptoms, and you have to meet certain criteria clinically. And then there are blood tests that we can use to confirm CIRS as well. All right. So a number of you have CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, that have not been diagnosed through lab tests, but your symptoms are significant in every category. All right. And that comes from biotoxin exposure and biotoxin illness. Can come from COVID, the COVID vaccine, Lyme, different types of bacteria, actinobacteria, and mold, mycotoxins. So mold is live, and mycotoxins are dead. And so for somebody that has CIRS, or really someone who's super sensitive, you don't even have to have a clinical diagnosis of CIRS. Your hertz should not really be above a 4. A lot of studies and a lot of CIRS practitioners say it shouldn't be above a 2. Okay, so your hertz should not be above a 2. I say 4 because I have seen people living in an environment with 4 and they're able to maintain and detox and heal. But above that, you're probably not going to be able to quiet the stress that's happening in your body, that's dysregulating your nervous system, that autonomic nervous system that's kind of governing everything in your body and regulating your circadian rhythm and cortisol and melatonin balance, your bile, your redox, methylation, all of these really important functions that come together, they're working on this clock. And so it becomes very dysregulated. And then it seems like we have just these random symptoms out of nowhere, when in fact, it's not out of nowhere. It's just kind of on this inflammatory clock that your body is now being governed by instead of your normal circadian rhythm clock. So this hurts me is a 30. That's that's pretty significant. So this is yeah, so this person has a lot of aspergillus, some Chidomium stachy, which is black mold. Really don't want any black mold at all, none. And then Wallemia. So these are considered the most toxic and carcinogenic molds that somebody could be exposed to. So if this is in our home, we're probably being exposed to it every day. So if we're being exposed to this particular type of stress every day, that means your nervous system doesn't get a chance to downregulate. So you're stuck in fight or flight. Even if you don't feel stressed, even if you don't have a lot of things that are stressful, even if, just say you have an amazing life, you have a wonderfully supportive spouse, you don't have a lot of things to really worry about, it doesn't matter. Your body's still stuck in this stress state. And so your body can't heal, right? We need to do our digesting when we're in parasympathetic state, and that's when the body can um, repair DNA and bring us new healthy cells and nourish the tissues that need support. And that doesn't happen when we're stuck in this fight or flight. So even if you don't feel stressed, having something like this in your environment that you're exposed to every day, it's getting on your skin, you're breathing it, you're swallowing it, so you are exposed. So that's upregulating your nervous system. And the first step when we're trying to heal from something like mold toxicity is to help manage our safety. Right? We have to do things like get to a baseline of safety. If you guys are in the program and you've read, these are the steps that we need to start addressing. Phase 1 is to claim that safety and just secure everything that we have control over. So we do have control over our diet. We can work on things like sleep and making sure that we are getting outside at proper time so that our body can see sunlight the way it needs to, so it can filter and process so that our circadian rhythm can be balanced. Controlling things like blue light and being exposed to artificial light, especially before bed, especially within 2 hours of bedtime. Those are the things that we want to deal with first. And then we work on removing the threats that we do have control over. So we do have to secure our home. I've done this for a lot of years, right? Over a decade of dealing with really, really sick people from mold illness, and my own family included. My first case was a very significant mold case. I'm thankful for this. It was hard to watch this family go through this pain and struggle, especially being a child. But had it not been so significant and so severe, I don't know that I would have recognized at the time that this was definitely mold. And I knew that it was mold even without testing. And, their confidence in the way that I felt prompted them to test, even though no one else was sick. They saw no evidence of mold, and certainly it actually was mold exposure in this person. Was the canary in the coal mine, right? And that's just some people are going to be that canary. They're going to smell the mold, feel the mold, know when the mold's there. For myself, I can smell mold on other humans. I can smell it coming out of their pores. I definitely smell it if it's on their clothes. I know if you live in a moldy environment right away, my body will react very strongly to you. And so some people are kind of blessed with that. I think it's just because they've already been exposed to it and they're heightened, so they are sensitized to that mold. All right, so getting back to what we need to focus on, which is why I wrote things down so we don't go off on tangents. Hydration. We have control over hydration. We need to make sure our cells are actually getting the hydration they need. So drinking tons and tons of water is not that method. We have to make sure the cells have exactly what they need as far as the mineral balance, electrolytes to get into the cell, and then the things that actually support the cell in the mitochondria. So we add different elements of that into a proper hydration stack, and then some antioxidants, sometimes amino acids, just to support this first phase of healing. It's very, very difficult to get the nutrition you need in order to take care of threats like mold illness. A lot of times, and most of the time, mold illness isn't isolated. It's not mutually exclusive to anything else like Epstein-Barr or Candida or Lyme disease, mycoplasma, different types of things that we typically see. I see a lot of chronic strep with mold. So these are ongoing threats that are in the body. The body's trying to regulate that. So we may not be able to address all of those things at once, but we can secure our home. We can do the test, right? Do the test first. The test does not come last. The test needs to come first because we need to make sure that we're not living in an environment that's keeping our nervous system dysregulated. If we are, it's going to be very impossible to even get that first step of safety healing, get our bowels moving. That's what we need to do. We need to really support our microcirculation, which is why we put you guys in the PEMF to really support that microcirculation. It's so critical whenever there's mold on board because of the hypercoagulation that can occur in the blood, because of the endothelial damage that can occur. And so those are things that we work on over time, right? Microcirculation. And you can definitely support all of these things at home as well, too. You can do vibration plates and lymphatic drainage and lymphatic dry body brushing, rebounding. Those are simple things that you can do as long as your body can tolerate it. Now, please, a word of caution, if your body is under duress, and you are having a lot of histamine dumps and mast cell flares, you may not be able to tolerate that. And that might not be the best place for you to start. So we want to work more on elimination, opening up those bowels. So constipation, as long as you're having a bowel movement at least every other day, right? Some people go every third day. That's okay. We can work on that. But you need to at least be having a bowel movement every other day. Once to twice a day would be optimal. That is optimal, right? Twice would be best case scenario. We don't want to use so many stimulants that we are then having loose bowels, watery bowels, urgent bowels. There needs to be a balance. So diarrhea is not great, but also constipation is also on the other end of, that's more dangerous. So there are lots of helpmates. If you guys are in this program, then you have all the guides and all of the tips, how we can use laxatives, how we can use enemas, how we can use warm water enema, and then we can use oral cleanouts as well. So there are lots and lots of effective ways to support the bowels. And hey, no one likes to use these methods, but it just is what it is. So sometimes we just have to use these healing methods while we're trying to work through complex issues like healing from mold. So on top of that, then we do want to support our microbiome. I tend to not throw a lot of probiotics at people without understanding what's going on in their microbiome, but there are a few probiotics that I do use. There's histamine X, prohistamine X from Seeking Health. That is something that I will use in certain cases, along with something like a DOA, just to break down histamine, help degrade histamine in the gut. And then there are other methods that we can use to kind of help reduce histamine responses to food because a lot of people can't even tolerate many foods at this point. And then there are other probiotics. So I do use sometimes soil probiotics. I have used Cellcore and I use Microbiome Labs. So those are two also. There are so many probiotics, guys. So I'm not saying that your probiotic is bad. I'm just saying that we need to use caution because sometimes we are feeding a problem that's already in our gut that's bad. Maybe we're dumping more histamine producing bacteria in our gut, and our gut is already really producing a lot of histamine. So we don't want to put fuel on the fire. And then custom probiotics has a delactate free probiotic that is really effective. It's really potent. So you have to use it very cautiously, right? As with anything, right? We never jump into having the full dose. I think that if you guys work with me, you know that by now that you should never start more than one thing at a time, and that you should also proceed with caution. And I always am very conservative with, regulating how someone is taking any type of probiotic, vitamin, anything, right? So check with your provider and just see if that feels like the right choice for you to use one of these. You can also ask me if you guys are working with me. So the microbiome is going to be dysregulated. That is no question. If the microbiome is exposed to something like mold, think about penicillin, where that comes from. That is derived from a mold, right? That acts like an antibiotic. So it is going to dysregulate our normal flora. If you've taken antibiotics already, if you're taking NSAIDs, Tylenol, steroids, if you had vaccines, if you got that COVID vaccine, if you had COVID, if you have H. pylori, if you have a lot of stress, anything that is not normal as far as like providing energy to your body and healing. So it could be something as simple as being sedentary. That also creates an imbalance in the gut, right? Same thing with being sad or going through a period of grief or anger. All of that is going to create some sort of response in the body. Chemical response and electrical response is going to downregulate what's going on in the body. So we want some of those bacteria to come in so they can act like little brooms and mop up some of these mycotoxins in the gut. They're there for that reason. They help to kind of eat some of the competitive bacteria that could become more pathogenic and some of that mold and mycotoxin. So we want to help support those. If you guys are at a place where you can tolerate a mash, then I definitely suggest you do that. Some of you may be too sensitive to do that, but a mash is where we collect about 10 to 20 different types of vegetables, one each. And these are things that you typically don't eat, won't eat, can't find that often, and you take them home, clean them very well, and then you blend them all together. If you can blend the core or the rind, then you do that as well. If not, take that off. Don't cook it. Portion it out into smaller portions. You could use a silicone ice cube tray, and then you're just going to take even a tiny spoonful. You don't have to have the entire cube. Take a little bit at a time. All you're doing is trying to give food to the bacteria that have been starving or that are in such minute quantities that they're just hanging on for dear life, hoping not to completely be eliminated from your microbiome. And so we can support those by feeding those that particular type of food, and that's what they eat, right? Just a word to the wise. I've done a lot of GI testing on people who are on carnivore and very strict carnivore, and they're not eating any plant food, and their butyrate producers are in the toilet. So they're going to have a lot of immune problems down the road. You don't feel it right now. You feel great right now, but you're headed for a disaster. So everything within moderation, use proper data in order to determine what type of diet you need to be eating instead of just haphazardly eating a diet. It's the same thing I see with vegans and vegetarians. You feel great for a while until your hormones tank, your immune systems react, you're malnourished, and now your body's not functioning, and you probably have a lot of neurotransmitter imbalance, which leads to a lot of anxiety, depression, stress, anxiety, OCD, all of those things. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the microbiome. Obviously, each of these topics can go on and on and on. I want to address a little bit the bile because that is something that I see pretty frequently that is a main driver of inflammation in neuroinflammation, infection, um, bile, the bile, right? Some of you have already had your gallbladder removed and your doctor never really talked to you about how to support your bile after they took out the gallbladder. Was your gallbladder actually diseased? Maybe it was. And if it was diseased, sometimes it needs to come out. But how do we know? We have to have those conversations. We have to advocate for ourselves. If your gallbladder is not really diseased, and there's a good chance if it was H. pylori. And that's something that a lot of people don't know about. They don't talk about. They don't understand the implications of H. pylori. They're strongly implicated in gallbladder disease and stomach cancer. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of that caught too late. right? And people finding out they have H. pylori and not really doing anything about it, or using a test, like a breath test only, or a blood test, and not using a stool test as well to confirm that diagnosis, or confirm that they actually do have it when those tests said that they were negative. So the bile, we have to think about what that is, emulsifying fat, right? And that's its job. The bile is actually on the timer of your body. So it goes with our circadian rhythm. So it's going to help stimulate a lot of processes in the body. And so if your circadian rhythm is off because your autonomic nervous system is not functioning the way it's supposed to, then that's probably going to be compromised as well. So just think about everything on this rhythm, okay? But the mycotoxins are fat soluble, so you need that bile in order to help bind them and eliminate them safely out of the body where they need to be. So certain situations we talk about increasing fats. There are some of you that can't tolerate that right now. So you've got to do a little bit more work. We need to use support to help you to be able to tolerate those the fats, right? So sometimes we have to use lipase and different types of digestive enzymes that have the added lipase. Lipogold is one of my favorites. I use that very frequently, very commonly with people who are suffering from mold illness or trying to heal and detox mycotoxins. Um, but we can't always just start with loading fat. Some of you are not going to tolerate that very well. The last thing we want to do is flush your body with so much fat that it actually is taking up more energy than you have to digest it, and it's creating loose stools, watery stools. So you're not actually digesting your food anyway. So we need to support, another way to support that is balancing minerals, which is why we always do an HTMA. We always do HTMA because there's so much that can be learned from that test. It's such a simple test, a very cost-effective way to just kind of get a snapshot of what's happening in the body. And that's one way we can take a look at maybe why we're not sleeping, why we're not having bowel movements, maybe why we're not tolerating our carbohydrates, what type of stress there is in the body. It is a great snapshot to look at the glands and look at, the adrenals, the thyroid, the pancreas, what's going on there. But that also, minerals are really the backbone, the catalyst, the cofactors for all these different types of enzymatic processes in the body. So if our minerals are in balance, we kind of have to take a look and ask why. Is it because we have an abundance of heavy metals that are actually competing for the receptor site in the cell? Or are we under such duress that we're burning through our minerals at such a rapid rate that we can't replete them? Are we not repleting them because of our diet and hydration? So that is the next phase that kind of goes hand in hand with regulating our bile. So we have to do all of these things before we get to mobilizing, before we jump into sauna, before we start trying to do binders. And some people want to jump into chelators because they think they need to detox metals at the same time. Guys, that is so stressful for your body. You also can have autoimmune reactions to heavy metals. So if metals are safe in your tissue and then you're pulling them out at this particular point where your body is already on fire, your immune system is already dysregulated, you have a lot of histamine stuff going on, your nervous system's completely out of whack, guys, and your vagus nerve's not functioning anymore the way it's supposed to. All you're doing is ramping up that nervous system response. You're not actually helping anything. I know you want to get it out of your body as fast as you possibly can, but you're doing more damage. So that's when I say, mitigate the threat and try to get to a place of safety. That's what I'm talking about. So just minimal gut support here, working on starting to eliminate some of the stressors, right? Hydration. So stress being blood sugar dysregulation, dysregulated sleep, even going to bed an hour or two later, once or twice a week, dysregulates your circadian rhythm. So that is something we have to think about too. So you have control over that. You can choose when you go to bed. If you can't sleep, that's a different story. And that could be because your circadian rhythm is dysregulated. You're making more cortisol at night than you are melatonin. Those are things we need to really think about, right? And that's just part of the investigative process. Yes, there are a dozen supplements you can take, wonderful things you can take to try to help you sleep: magnesium, holy basil, lemon balm, kava, GABA. There's just so many different things that you can take to try to mitigate what's going on in your body, but you're still not getting to the root of why that's dysregulated. So if you need support to sleep, that's okay. But we have to still work on those reasons of why we're not sleeping, why we're getting those jolts at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Is it cortisol? Is it a histamine dump, right? Is it dysregulation with your heme pathways? So there are several reasons why, and that conversation needs to take place, and that needs your awareness and extra attention. It's not something to gloss over. You need to pay attention to that because Without sleep, again, if you're continuing to dysregulate that circadian rhythm, your autonomic nervous system is going to stay stuck in fight or flight because everything feels like a threat. So sleep, circadian rhythm, removing the threats, right? So chemicals, mold, VOCs, EMFs, guys, we don't talk a lot about that. This emits EMF. See this little thing I have on here? All right. This definitely helps to mitigate some of that. It does not fully remove it. Being right here on this laptop computer, not hardwired, is emitting EMF all day, every day. Same thing in your home. Where is your router? And then is everything Wi-Fi in your house? If it is, you are under a lot of electromagnetic frequency stress. It is all around us. It's in shopping malls, buildings, it's out in our neighborhood. So we really have to mitigate that in our own homes, especially at night when we're trying to sleep. That's when we heal. So disconnect your Wi-Fi or hardwire everything to your modem, right? You can turn it all off at night and plug it back in the morning. Do not sleep with these devices on you or near you. They need to be far away. They need to be at least 6 feet across the room. Do not sleep with those little earbud things that are Wi-Fi. Guys, the things that go across your head, those different types of glasses, that is one of the worst things that I have seen and people just readily hand over to their children, right? Your brain is the most important thing in your entire body. Without the brain functioning, nothing else functions in the body. We're just creating all this inflammation and this perfect um, recipe for catastrophic disaster by using those wireless earbuds and those different types of VR goggles, and then using our phone. I see a lot of women put their phone in their pocket right next to their breast. People keep it in their pocket, men especially in their pants pocket. Or we're always talking with our phones up here, guys. We have to stop that. And the wireless earbuds are no better. So those are stressors that are invisible, but they're affecting your body every day. Glyphosate, something that a lot of us live near golf courses or in neighborhoods with HOAs, and so they are constantly spraying and treating our lawns. They are more than likely using a form of glyphosate, which is a complete neurotoxin. It does affect your microbiome. It will dysregulate your bacteria, right? And so dysregulating bacteria is going to create every other problem in your body. Our bacteria are those super helpful little binders. They're also metabolizing our nutrients. That's why we talk about our immune system being in our gut. So glyphosate exposure on commercial food, coffee, grains, anything that has been grown commercially is probably treated with glyphosate. And so that is something you have to think about. It's not that it's the one time you eat the cereal or the one coffee that you get, it's accumulative. And then if it's, you're exposed around your home, if you're even near within like a 5 mile radius of a golf course, you're being exposed. And this is really interesting too. If you look up Parkinson's now, they've just confirmed with all of these studies, and there've been so many of these studies that the number one cause is not genetics in Parkinson's, it's toxic exposure. And they were determining the people that live within the range of the golf course are developing that at faster rates. People that are using dry cleaning for their clothing, the material that they're using is very, very dangerous. So we have to just start to kind of be aware of all these things that we do have control over, and then make those changes. And then emotional support, guys, this is huge. So if you guys have been sick for a long time, or maybe you had a trauma, just say that you're suffering from Lyme disease. You have felt very unwell for years. Maybe people can't see your illness, so they really don't believe you, or they do believe you, but they don't really see that you're sick, so they don't have as much concern for you. And maybe you feel that they're tired of hearing it, or um, maybe you feel alienated because you can't do a lot of things that you used to do anymore. If you're living in mold, you have mold illness, you have a lot of symptoms, you're just sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And so you can fall really easily into that victimhood, that victim mindset of why is this happening to me? Poor me, nothing ever goes my way. Nobody ever helps me. No one's here to fix me. Nobody ever gets it right. This is a really dangerous place to be, guys. And so this is where a lot of people can settle. So we need to have that emotional support. And by no means am I telling you to think on the bright side or be positive. I'm telling you that you need to safeguard your heart, safeguard your mind, and you have to work extra hard every day to give yourself that positive biofeedback, right? You have to affirm that you're healing, affirm that you're healthy, affirm that you have everything that you need because your body is listening to what your mind is telling it, okay? And how you're feeling is going to feed those thoughts. So we really, really have to safeguard that because it's very, very dangerous territory. All we're saying is that our world doesn't care about us. The world is not safe. I'm not safe. I'm not loved. No one cares about me. I'm never going to get better. And unfortunately, that we can manifest that, right? Not through some woo-woo practice, but where our mind and heart go, our actions also follow. And it's just really easy to get kind of wallowed down in some of that behavior and thinking. So I don't really want to get into the detoxification because that is kind of that comes after all of this. And that is when we're talking about supporting our phase one, phase two liver clearance. We're talking about binders. We're talking about antifungals. We're talking about sauna. We're talking about just different types of therapies that we may use, right? So we use foot baths, we use sauna, we have vagal nerve toning here now. That is wonderful. We can use that in the interim and we can use that in the beginning for pretty much every person because we can use it at a very, very low frequency. We can use it for a very short amount of time. And that is helping to stimulate the vagal balance in your body to bring your body out of fight or flight to get you back into rest and digest so that you can start to heal. And it's not a fast process, but it's something over time that starts to build your resilience, starts to increase your heart rate variability. And it just helps regulate your nervous system, which is what we need when we're healing from these chronic conditions. I hope that this makes sense. Obviously, there's so much more we can discuss. And if you guys want to talk about it, just jump in the chat. If you're not part of our group or you're not working with me one-on-one, then check out some of our free resources on the website. I would love to connect with you. All right. Take care.